The Boeing 737 cruised at 37,000 feet, its passengers lost in the mundane rhythm of commercial flight. Captain Zara Thorne had chosen row 13 deliberately. Superstition was for people who hadn't survived 3 tours over contested airspace. She adjusted her worn leather jacket, the one with faded squadron patches that most civilians mistook for fashion statements. Her eyes drifted closed as the plane's engines hummed their familiar lullaby. The static crackled through the cabin speakers like lightning-splitting silence. United 742, this is Nellie's control. Confirm you have Captain Zara Ghost Thorne on board. Repeat, confirm the female captain on board. Every head in the cabin turned toward the intercom. Flight attendants exchanged confused glances. The pilot's voice came through uncertain, almost apologetic. Nellie's control, this is United 742. We're a commercial flight en route to Denver. No military personnel listed on our manifest. Zara's eyes snapped open. Her hand instinctively moved to her hip where her sidearm would have been 6 months ago, before the medical discharge that still tasted bitter as copper pennies. She knew that voice on the radio, Colonel Marcus Webb, her former commanding officer. The man who'd signed the papers that grounded her permanently after the incident in Syrian airspace. United 742, we have confirmation Captain Thorne purchased ticket 13C on your aircraft. This is priority Alpha classification. Request immediate contact. The businessman beside her shifted uncomfortably, stealing glances at her civilian clothes, her unremarkable appearance. Just another passenger until 30 seconds ago. Now she was something else entirely, a ghost being summoned back from the dead. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unlisted number. Nevada desert, 40 minutes out, you know what we found. Zara's blood turned to ice water. There were only 3 things that could pull her back into military channels: an act of war, a matter of national security, or something connected to the classified mission that had cost her everything. The mission that officially never happened. The mission where 18 American servicemen died because she'd made a choice between following orders and following her conscience. She stood slowly, her legs steady despite the turbulence in her chest. The flight attendant approached with practiced concern, but Zara was already moving toward the cockpit. Behind her, passengers whispered and speculated, their voices creating a symphony of curiosity and fear. They had no idea that the woman in row 13 had just become their only hope of understanding why military jets were now flanking their commercial airliner, their wings glinting like steel promises in the desert sun below. The plane began its unscheduled descent toward Nevada, carrying secrets that some people would kill to protect, and one woman who'd already lost everything trying to expose the truth. The sky ahead shimmered with heat and possibilities, both deadly and beautiful. Captain Zara, Ghost, Thorne was about to discover that some ghosts refused to stay buried. The cockpit felt smaller than she remembered, cramped with civilian instrumentation that seemed almost quaint after years of military avionics. Captain Rodriguez, the commercial pilot, kept glancing at her through the rearview mirror as if she might spontaneously combust. His co-pilot, younger and clearly rattled, kept checking their escort, 2 F-22 Raptors maintaining perfect formation off their wingtips. "Ma'am, I don't understand what's happening here," Rodriguez said, his voice tight with the kind of control that came from 20 years of flying passengers safely from point A to point B. "Nellie's is directing us to an auxiliary runway. They won't tell us why." Zara studied the tactical display, her trained eyes automatically cataloging altitude, airspeed, and bearing. The Raptors weren't just escorting them, they were herding them, maintaining positions that would make any deviation impossible. Professional work. She recognized the formation patterns, the subtle adjustments that spoke of pilots who knew their business. "Those are from the 422nd Test and Evaluation Squadron," she said quietly, watching the lead Raptor's pilot through his canopy. Even at this distance, she could see the deliberate precision of his movements. "They don't scramble for routine intercepts." The radio crackled again. United 742, you are cleared direct to Nelly's auxiliary runway 27. Maintain current altitude until further advised. Ghost, if you're listening, you know why we called. She keyed her phone and dialed a number she'd memorized but hoped never to use. It rang once before connecting. This is Ghost. Zara, Colonel Webb's voice carried the weight of sleepless nights and classified briefings. We found it, the crash site. What you said would happen, it happened. Her throat constricted. 6 months ago, she'd stood in a sterile debriefing room and told them exactly what would occur if they continued the program. They'd called her insubordinate, traumatized, unreliable. They'd buried her report in classification levels that didn't officially exist and sent her home with a medical discharge and a pension that felt like hush money. How many, she asked. 17 civilians. A research facility outside Tanapa. The prototype worked exactly like you predicted it would. The co-pilot turned in his seat, his face pale. Ma'am, are you military? Because those fighters are armed, and I'm starting to think this isn't a routine diversion. Zara looked out at the Nevada desert rolling beneath them, its alien landscape painted in shades of rust and shadow. Somewhere down there, 17 people had died because she'd been right about something she desperately hoped to be wrong about. The project they'd code-named Prometheus, humanity's fire stolen from the gods, had finally burned down the house. I was military, she said, watching the Raptors adjust their formation as they approached Nelly's airspace. Now I'm just someone who knows where the bodies are buried. The desert stretched endlessly below, keeping its secrets until the moment of truth arrived with the screaming of jet engines and the weight of decisions that could reshape the world. Nelly's Air Force Base appeared on the horizon like a mirage made real, its runways cutting geometric precision into the hostile desert landscape. Zara had been here countless times, but never as a passenger on a commandeered commercial flight with 200 terrified civilians behind her. The auxiliary runway stretched before them, flanked by vehicles she recognized, black SUVs with government plates, and the kind of antenna arrays that screamed classified operations. Jesus Christ, muttered the co-pilot as they began their approach. That's not a normal ground crew. He was right. Instead of typical ground support equipment, the runway was lined with armed security personnel in desert camouflage. Mobile command units bristled with communication gear. This wasn't a standard military reception. This was the kind of setup reserved for situations that could escalate beyond anyone's control. Captain Rodriguez's hands moved steadily across the controls, his professional demeanor masking what had to be considerable unease. Tower, United 742 on final approach, runway 27. Request instructions for passenger handling upon landing. United 742, upon landing, taxi to holding area Delta. All passengers will remain aboard until further notice. Captain Thorne will deplane immediately upon arrival. Behind them in the main cabin, Zara could hear the rising murmur of passenger concern. Flight attendants moved through the aisles with practiced calm, but she caught glimpses of their strained expressions. They were trained for emergencies, but not for military intercepts that transformed routine flights into classified operations. Her phone buzzed with another text. Prometheus protocol activated 26 hours ago. Facility 7 went dark at 3:47 hours. We need your expertise. Facility 7. She closed her eyes and felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders like lead blankets. She'd helped design the security protocols for Facility 7 during her final assignment. It was supposed to be impenetrable, a research installation buried so deep in the Nevada desert that even its existence was classified above most generals' clearance levels. If Facility 7 had gone dark, it meant something had gone catastrophically wrong with humanity's most dangerous experiment. The 737 touched down with barely a whisper, Rodriguez's skill evident in the smooth contact with the runway. As they rolled toward the designated holding area, Zara could see the full scope of the operation waiting for her. Military police vehicles flanked their taxi route. Personnel carriers suggested they were prepared for a much larger situation than one grounded ex-pilot. "Ma'am," the co-pilot said, turning to face her directly, "I don't know what's happening here, but those people look ready for war." Zara stood and retrieved her small carry-on bag, feeling the weight of the classified documents she'd kept despite explicit orders to destroy them. Sometimes being right was its own curse. "They're not ready for war," she said, watching the ground crews take positions around the aircraft. "They're trying to prevent one." The plane came to a complete stop. Through the cockpit windows, she could see Colonel Webb approaching across the tarmac, flanked by personnel she didn't recognize. His gait carried the urgency of a man racing against time and the weight of secrets that could reshape global power structures. The war hadn't started yet, but the first shots were already being fired in conference rooms and classified facilities across the desert Southwest. Colonel Webb looked older than his 53 years, his desert utilities crisp, but his eyes carrying the haunted quality of a man who'd seen too many classified briefings go wrong. He stood at the base of the aircraft's stairs as Zara descended, flanked by two officers she didn't recognize. One Air Force, one wearing the kind of unmarked fatigues that suggested intelligence community. "Captain Thorne," Webb said, offering a salute that she didn't return. Her discharge papers had been final, regardless of the circumstances that brought her here. "It's just Zara now, Marcus," she replied, setting her feet on the Nevada tarmac. The desert heat hit her like a physical force, dry air that tasted of sand and aviation fuel. "Though I'm guessing courtesy calls don't usually involve fighter escorts and commandeered civilian aircraft." The unnamed intelligence officer stepped forward, his bearing suggesting military background despite the lack of visible rank. "Ms. Thorne, I'm Agent Harrison. We need to move quickly. The situation has evolved since we contacted your flight." Evolved. Military speak for gotten worse in ways we didn't anticipate. They walked toward a waiting convoy of black vehicles, their movement tracked by security personnel positioned throughout the area. Zara caught glimpses of sniper teams on nearby buildings, their presence subtle but unmistakable to anyone trained to notice such things. Whatever had happened at Facility 7, they were treating it as a potential threat to national security. "How many people knew about my involvement in Prometheus?" she asked as they reached the lead SUV. Webb exchanged glances with Harrison before answering. "Officially, 17 people with appropriate clearance levels. Unofficially," he opened the vehicle door for her. "That's part of the problem." The SUV's interior was equipped with communication gear more sophisticated than most military command posts. Secure phones, encrypted data terminals, and monitoring equipment that suggested they were operating under active surveillance protocols. As they pulled away from the aircraft, Zara watched the commercial passengers through tinted windows, their faces pressed against the small airline windows, trying to understand why their routine flight had become a military operation. "The prototype worked," Harrison said without preamble as they cleared the runway area. "Your predictions about the quantum cascade effect were accurate to within 3% of observed parameters." Zara felt ice water flow through her veins. She'd hoped, desperately hoped, that her mathematical models had been wrong, that the theoretical cascade effect she'd calculated would prove to be nothing more than academic speculation. Instead, it had become reality with deadly consequences. "Show me the data," she said. Harrison activated a tablet, its screen displaying information that made her stomach lurch. Seismic readings, electromagnetic signatures, and casualty reports painted a picture of scientific advancement crossed with humanitarian catastrophe. The research facility hadn't just been destroyed, it had been consumed by forces that conventional physics struggled to explain. 17 civilian contractors were inside the facility when the cascade initiated, Webb continued. But that's not our primary concern anymore. The effect is expanding, slowly but measurably. Our best projections give us 72 hours before it reaches the nearest populated area. Through the vehicle's bulletproof windows, the Nevada desert stretched endlessly, its barren landscape suddenly seeming fragile rather than hostile. Somewhere beneath that ancient earth, humanity had unleashed something that defied understanding and threatened consequences beyond imagination. The convoy turned toward the classified sections of Nellie's, carrying the only person who might understand how to stop what she'd predicted would happen. The briefing room existed 3 levels below the desert floor, its walls lined with electromagnetic shielding that made the space feel like a tomb. Zara sat at a conference table scarred by countless classified discussions, facing a collection of military and civilian officials whose security clearances probably cost more than most people's annual salaries. The air recycling system hummed constantly, a reminder that they were sealed away from the world above. General Patricia Morrison commanded the room without effort, her 3 stars carrying the authority of someone accustomed to making decisions that affected global security. She activated the main display screen with practiced efficiency, revealing satellite imagery that made Zara's previous fears seem optimistic. "This is Facility 7 as of 6 hours ago," Morrison said. The image showed a perfect circle of disturbed Earth approximately 400 meters in diameter. Where the research installation had stood, there was now only smooth, glass-like material that reflected the desert sun like a mirror. "The cascade effect you predicted has created a zone of altered spacetime that's expanding at a rate of approximately 3 meters per hour." Dr. Sarah Chen, the project's lead physicist, leaned forward with the intensity of someone whose life's work had become a potential extinction event. "The quantum field generators were operating within normal parameters when the cascade initiated. Every safety protocol we developed based on your original research was in place and functioning." Zara studied the expanding zone of destruction, her mind automatically calculating expansion rates and potential containment strategies. "Show me the energy readings from the initial event." The display shifted to spectral analysis data that confirmed her worst fears. The prototype hadn't just achieved the desired quantum manipulation effects. It had torn a hole in the fundamental structure of reality itself, creating a self-sustaining reaction that fed on the electromagnetic field of the Earth itself. "You built it wrong," she said quietly. "Not the hardware, the theoretical framework. You ignored my warnings about resonance frequency interactions with planetary magnetic fields." Agent Harrison consulted his classified tablet. "Your final report recommended suspension of all Prometheus research pending further mathematical modeling. That recommendation was overruled by direct presidential authorization." The weight of bureaucratic stupidity settled on the room like toxic gas. Zara had spent months developing safety protocols and theoretical frameworks, only to watch them dismissed by officials who prioritized political timelines over scientific caution. Now 17 people were dead, and an expanding zone of altered reality threatened to consume everything in its path. "What's the current administration's position?" she asked. General Morrison's expression revealed nothing, but her tone carried the exhaustion of someone managing impossible situations. "The president is receiving hourly briefings. Our allies have been notified through appropriate channels. Russia and China are demanding explanations for the seismic anomalies their monitoring stations detected." Through the reinforced walls, Zara could almost feel the weight of the desert above them, pressing down with the accumulated silence of geological ages. Somewhere up there, the expanding zone continued its relentless growth, consuming everything it touched and transforming it into something that existed outside conventional understanding of physics and reality. "I need access to the original research data," she said. "All of it, including the classified theoretical frameworks that were developed after my discharge. The officials exchanged glances weighted with security protocols and bureaucratic caution. But as the minutes passed and the zone continued expanding, their options narrowed toward a single, unavoidable truth. She was their only hope of understanding what they had unleashed upon the world. The classified archives occupied an entire sublevel of the facility, their contents protected by security measures that would have impressed paranoid dictators. Zara worked alone at a terminal surrounded by decades of theoretical physics research, mathematical models that pushed the boundaries of human understanding, and experimental data that most scientists would never be cleared to examine. Her security escort, a young Air Force lieutenant named Rodriguez, no relation to the commercial pilot, maintained respectful distance while monitoring her every keystroke. Standard protocol for classified research, though the irony wasn't lost on her that she was being watched while reviewing her own work. The Prometheus Project files painted a picture of scientific ambition crossed with military necessity. After her discharge, the research team had continued developing her theoretical frameworks, pushing the mathematical models beyond the safety parameters she'd recommended. They'd achieved breakthrough results in quantum field manipulation, but at the cost of fundamental stability. "Lieutenant," she said, not looking up from the screen, "how long have you been stationed here?" 18 months, ma'am. Arrived just after the first successful prototype tests." She scrolled through test data from the months following her departure, noting the increasingly aggressive experimental parameters. "Did you ever meet any of the civilian contractors who were killed?" Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably. "A few of them. Dr. Patterson was. She was a good person, really excited about the potential applications for renewable energy." Renewable energy. The official cover story for Project Prometheus had described it as advanced research into quantum-based power generation. The reality was far more complex and far more dangerous. They had been attempting to manipulate the fundamental forces that held atoms together, seeking to harness energy directly from the quantum vacuum itself. The mathematics were elegant, the potential applications revolutionary. But Zara's calculations had revealed a fatal flaw. Under certain conditions, the process could become self-sustaining, feeding on the electromagnetic field of the planet itself until it consumed everything. Her phone buzzed with an encrypted message from General Morrison. "Expansion rate has increased to 4 meters per hour. Nearest populated area is Tanapa, population 2,478. Projected contact in 61 hours." 61 hours. Zara closed her eyes and felt the weight of time pressing against her consciousness like a physical force. Somewhere above them, families were going about their daily routines, unaware that their existence might depend on theoretical calculations performed in a bunker buried beneath the Nevada desert. She opened the final classified file, her own original research notes, the ones that had led to her medical discharge and forced retirement. The mathematical proofs were still elegant, her theoretical framework still sound, but buried within the equations was something she'd missed during her original analysis, a variable she dismissed as statistically insignificant. "Oh God," she whispered, staring at the screen. "It's not expanding randomly, it's following the magnetic field lines." The expanding zone wasn't just consuming matter, it was following the Earth's magnetic field toward the magnetic North Pole, which meant it wouldn't stop at Tanapa. It would continue north, consuming everything in its path, until it reached populated areas of Canada and potentially beyond. The scope of the disaster had just expanded beyond regional catastrophe toward potential global extinction event. The emergency session convened within minutes of her discovery, filling the briefing room with an urgency that crackled like electricity through the recycled air. General Morrison stood before the main display, which now showed a projected path of the expanding anomaly following magnetic field lines toward populated areas of the Pacific Northwest. Dr. Thorne's analysis indicates the expansion follows predictable patterns based on electromagnetic field topology, Morrison announced to the assembled officials. Current trajectory threatens major population centers within 96 hours. Zara stood at the presentation podium, feeling the weight of attention from military officers, intelligence officials, and scientific advisors, whose combined security clearances represented the deepest secrets of American defense policy. She activated her prepared presentation, her hands steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to reveal. The Prometheus prototype achieved quantum field manipulation by creating localized distortions in spacetime itself, she began. However, these distortions interact with planetary electromagnetic fields in ways we didn't fully understand. The result is a self-sustaining cascade effect that feeds on the Earth's own magnetic field. Agent Harrison leaned forward with the intensity of someone whose world was reshaping itself around classified briefings and impossible decisions. Can the process be stopped? Theoretically, yes. The cascade requires a specific harmonic frequency to maintain stability. Disrupting that frequency should cause the effect to collapse back to normal spacetime. She paused, studying faces around the table. However, the disruption would require another quantum field generator operating at precise parameters. We would essentially need to fight fire with fire. Dr. Chen activated her own tablet, consulting mathematical models that had been developed during Zara's absence. We have 3 additional Prometheus prototypes in various stages of development. 2 at Facility 12 in Colorado, 1 at the Brookhaven facility in New York. The implications hung in the air like toxic gas. They were discussing using experimental technology that had already killed 17 people and created an expanding zone of destruction. The cure might prove worse than the disease, but alternatives were narrowing rapidly. Colonel Webb spoke for the first time during the briefing. What's the probability of success? Zara looked at the assembled officials, these people whose decisions would determine whether her theoretical calculations became humanity's salvation or its final chapter. The honest answer was complex, filled with mathematical uncertainties and theoretical variables that existed beyond the boundaries of proven science. Based on current mathematical models, approximately 63%, she said. But those models are based on theoretical frameworks that have already proven fallible. The honest answer is that we're operating beyond the boundaries of known physics. General Morrison consulted her secure communications device, presumably receiving updates from monitoring stations tracking the expanding anomaly. Dr. Thorne, assuming we proceed with your recommended approach, how long would preparation require? Minimum 12 hours to modify an existing prototype to the required specifications. Another 6 hours for transportation and positioning. The timing will be critical. We'll have one opportunity to disrupt the cascade before it reaches sufficient size to become unstoppable. The room fell silent except for the humming of air recycling systems and the distant vibration of classified operations continuing throughout the facility. Somewhere above them, the Nevada desert kept its ancient secrets, while humanity grappled with forces beyond its understanding or control. The secure video conference connected her to Facility 12 in Colorado, where Dr. Marcus Webb, the colonel's physicist brother, supervised modifications to Prometheus Prototype 3. The connection was encrypted through multiple satellite relays, creating a communications lag that added surreal timing to discussions about preventing potential global catastrophe. Zara, good to see you again, Marcus said through the secured connection. His laboratory background was cluttered with quantum field generators, mathematical whiteboards, and the organized chaos of emergency scientific research. Marcus tells me you figured out what went wrong. She studied the prototype visible behind him on the screen, noting the modifications his team had implemented based on her revised calculations. The device looked deceptively simple, metallic rings surrounding a central chamber, connected to computer systems that could have belonged to any advanced physics laboratory. Only the electromagnetic shielding and the armed security personnel visible at the edges of the frame revealed its true nature. The harmonic frequency calculations were correct, but we didn't account for resonance effects with planetary magnetic field fluctuations, she explained. The cascade becomes self-sustaining because it's feeding on electromagnetic energy from the Earth itself. Dr. Patricia Kim, Marcus's lead engineer, leaned into the camera frame. We've implemented your recommended frequency modulators, but the power requirements are significant. We're looking at drawing energy equivalent to a small city just to generate the disruption field. That was the fundamental challenge. The expanding anomaly drew its energy from the planet's own magnetic field, making it essentially unlimited in scope. Disrupting it would require matching that energy level, even if only briefly. "What's your timeline for transportation to Nevada?" Zara asked. C-17 transport is being prepared now. Flight time approximately 90 minutes once we're airborne. The device is designed for field deployment, but setup will require precise positioning relative to the anomaly. General Morrison entered the frame from outside camera range, her expression revealing the strain of managing operations that existed beyond normal military protocols. "Dr. Thorne, we've received updated measurements from the monitoring stations. Expansion rate has increased to 4.7 meters per hour. The acceleration was troubling but not unexpected. As the anomaly grew larger, it encountered more electromagnetic field lines, providing additional energy to fuel its expansion. The mathematics suggested exponential growth once it reached critical mass, a point they were approaching rapidly. We need to position the disruption device at the exact geometric center of the anomaly's current position," Zara said. "Any deviation greater than 50 meters will result in incomplete field cancellation." Through the secured connection, she watched Marcus and his team implement final modifications to hardware that might save or doom them all. The prototype represented humanity's best attempt at controlling forces it barely understood, operated by people whose expertise was measured in decades of theoretical research and classified experimentation. But as the minutes passed and the anomaly continued expanding, their options narrowed toward a single point of decision: deploy experimental technology in an untested configuration, or watch as an expanding zone of altered reality consumed everything in its path. The choice was no choice at all, which made it somehow worse than impossible decisions with clear alternatives. The modified C-17 Globemaster III approached Nellie's airspace carrying cargo that could reshape or end human civilization. Zara watched its approach from the observation deck of the underground facility, the aircraft's massive silhouette etched against the Nevada sky like a mechanical bird carrying fire from the gods. Colonel Webb stood beside her, his uniform crisp despite 18 hours of continuous operations. Prometheus 3 is secured in the cargo bay along with the positioning equipment. Marcus says they've achieved 97% confidence in the harmonic frequency calculations. 97%. In normal scientific research, such figures would represent remarkable precision. For preventing global catastrophe, they felt inadequate, like trying to perform heart surgery with margin of error that might kill the patient. "What's the latest from the monitoring stations?" she asked. Webb consulted his secure tablet, its screen displaying information that represented the cutting edge of classified surveillance technology. Expansion rate has stabilized at 4.8 meters per hour. Current diameter is 847 meters and growing. We've detected electromagnetic anomalies extending approximately 2 kilometers beyond the visible zone. The invisible effects were almost more troubling than the expanding area of altered spacetime. Electronic equipment failed at the boundaries, power grids fluctuated, and communication systems experienced interference patterns that suggested reality itself was becoming unstable in ways that conventional physics couldn't explain. Agent Harrison joined them on the observation deck, his expression carrying the weight of briefings from intelligence agencies whose existence was classified above most congressional security clearances. The president has been fully briefed. Our allies are positioning monitoring assets to track the situation. Russia is demanding access to our research data. Of course they were. The expanding anomaly was visible to any nation with sophisticated surveillance capabilities. Satellite imagery couldn't be classified when it showed a growing circle of destruction in the American desert, and the seismic effects were being detected by monitoring stations across the globe. "What's the official explanation?" Zara asked. "Contained nuclear incident at a classified research facility. Cleanup operations proceeding under appropriate protocols." The lie would hold for perhaps another day before independent analysis revealed the truth. Nuclear explosions left characteristic signatures that could be analyzed and understood. What they were dealing with existed beyond conventional explanations, in the realm of theoretical physics that most governments pretended didn't exist. The C-17 touched down on the main runway with the gentle precision of military transport operations. As she watched ground crews position themselves around the aircraft, Zara felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. 17 people had died because her warnings were ignored. Now she had one opportunity to prevent that number from growing to include potentially millions. Through the observation deck's reinforced windows, the Nevada desert stretched endlessly toward the horizon, its ancient landscape about to witness humanity's attempt to control forces that existed beyond the boundaries of known science. The next few hours would determine whether theoretical physics could save the world, or whether good intentions would prove insufficient against the fundamental forces of the universe. Prometheus Prototype 3 emerged from the C-17's cargo bay like technological archaeology made manifest. Its metallic rings and quantum field generators, representing the pinnacle of classified research that existed in the shadow spaces between science and military application. The device rode on specialized transport equipment, designed for battlefield deployment of experimental systems, its weight distributed across multiple support platforms that moved with mechanical precision. Dr. Marcus Webb supervised the unloading operation with the focused intensity of someone whose theoretical calculations would soon be tested against the harsh reality of physics and consequences. His team of specialists worked with practiced efficiency, their movements coordinated by years of handling equipment that could reshape the fundamental nature of matter and energy. The transport went smoothly, Marcus reported as Zara approached the aircraft. All systems maintained calibration throughout the flight. We're ready for final positioning once we reach the deployment site. They had chosen a location approximately 3 kilometers from the expanding anomaly, close enough for the quantum field disruptor to achieve maximum effectiveness, while maintaining sufficient distance for personnel safety. The mathematics suggested they would have one opportunity to initiate the disruption sequence before the expanding zone made approach impossible. General Morrison coordinated the convoy preparation from a mobile command post positioned near the runway. All personnel are equipped with radiation monitoring equipment and emergency communication gear. Medical support teams are standing by. Dr. Thorne, you'll accompany the primary team to provide real-time analysis during deployment. The convoy consisted of 8 vehicles carrying the disruptor components, technical support equipment, and security personnel trained for operations involving classified technology. As they prepared to depart Nellies, Zara felt the weight of time pressing against her consciousness. Each minute that passed represented nearly 5 meters of additional expansion, carrying the anomaly closer to populated areas. The drive through the Nevada desert took them past landscapes that had witnessed decades of classified experiments, secret tests, and military operations that existed beyond public knowledge. Ancient mountains rose like monuments to geological time, their peaks crowned with monitoring stations and communication arrays that tracked activities throughout the region. ETA to deployment site is 37 minutes, announced the convoy commander through the communication system. Current expansion measurements indicate the anomaly diameter has reached 863 meters. Through the reinforced windows of the command vehicle, Zara watched the desert landscape pass in a blur of sand and sagebrush. The beauty of the environment seemed almost surreal given the magnitude of what they were attempting. This was the landscape where humanity had first split the atom, developed nuclear weapons, and pushed the boundaries of physics toward applications that previous generations could never have imagined. Now they were about to attempt something that existed beyond even those historical achievements, using experimental technology to heal a wound torn in the fabric of spacetime itself. The convoy continued north, toward their appointment with forces that might prove beyond human control or understanding. The deployment site offered clear sightlines to the expanding anomaly, while providing sufficient distance for equipment setup and personnel safety. From their position, the zone of altered spacetime appeared as a perfect circle of mirror-bright material that reflected the Nevada sun with painful intensity, its boundaries marked by the geometric precision of forces operating beyond conventional physics. Prometheus Prototype 3 required 47 minutes for complete assembly and calibration, each component positioned according to mathematical calculations that pushed the boundaries of quantum field theory. Marcus Webb and his technical team worked with focused efficiency, their movements coordinated by procedures developed through years of classified research. Field generators are online and achieving stable output, announced Dr. Patricia Kim, consulting readouts from monitoring equipment that surrounded the prototype like electronic sentries. Harmonic frequency modulators are responding within acceptable parameters. Zara studied the expanding anomaly through high-powered binoculars, noting the perfect smoothness of its boundaries and the way it seemed to bend light around its edges. The effect was subtle but unmistakable, a visual indication that spacetime itself had been altered in ways that challenged fundamental understanding of reality. Current diameter is 891 meters, reported the monitoring specialist from his position at the command post. Expansion rate remains constant at 4.8 meters per hour. Electromagnetic interference is increasing within a 2-kilometer radius. The interference was becoming problematic for their own equipment. Communication systems experienced periodic failures, electronic devices flickered unpredictably, and the quantum field generators themselves showed fluctuations that suggested interaction with forces beyond their design parameters. Colonel Webb coordinated final preparations from the mobile command center, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. All non-essential personnel to minimum safe distance. Technical teams, prepare for activation sequence on Dr. Thorne's authorization. She looked at the assembled equipment, this collection of experimental technology that represented humanity's best attempt at controlling forces it barely understood. The prototype gleamed in the desert sun, its metallic surfaces reflecting light with the cold precision of advanced engineering married to theoretical physics. "Begin activation sequence," she announced. The quantum field generators came online with a harmonic vibration that seemed to resonate through the ground itself. Electronic displays showed energy patterns that existed at the intersection of mathematics and reality, building toward frequencies calculated to disrupt the self-sustaining cascade that fed on the Earth's own electromagnetic field. Through her binoculars, Zara watched the expanding anomaly for any signs of change. The mirror-bright surface continued its relentless growth, consuming matter and transforming it into something that existed outside conventional understanding. But for the first time since the crisis began, they were fighting back with weapons forged from the same theoretical frameworks that had created the problem. The battle between human ingenuity and the fundamental forces of the universe had begun. The harmonic disruption field built toward critical amplitude, while electronic monitoring systems tracked energy patterns that existed beyond the normal spectrum of physics and mathematics. Prometheus Prototype 3 operated at the upper limits of its design parameters, generating frequencies calculated to destabilize the cascade effect through precise interference with quantum field fluctuations. Approaching resonance frequency, Dr. Kim announced from her position at the control console. Field strength at 87% of calculated requirements. Zara maintained visual contact with the expanding anomaly, watching for any indication that their intervention was achieving the desired effect. The mirror-bright surface continued its steady growth, but she thought she detected subtle changes in the way it reflected light, minor fluctuations that might indicate structural instability. Electromagnetic interference is increasing exponentially, reported the communications specialist. We're losing telemetry from monitoring stations within 3 kilometers of the anomaly. The interference was expected but troubling. As their disruption field approached maximum effectiveness, it was interacting with the anomaly's own electromagnetic effects, creating feedback patterns that challenged the stability of both systems. They were approaching a critical point where success and failure might be separated by variables too small to measure. Marcus Webb made final adjustments to the field generators, his movements precise despite the pressure of operating experimental equipment under conditions that existed beyond all previous testing. Harmonic frequency at optimal settings. Field coherence is holding within acceptable parameters. Through the command post communication systems, General Morrison's voice carried updates from monitoring stations positioned throughout the region. Seismic sensors are detecting subsur.